All right, a couple technical difficulties again tonight, but not nearly so bad. As you can see, I have an image behind me that I'm using a green screen for, and it's been kind of a pain. Anyway, I'm Chad, and this is Full Circle. This is episode 5, so if you haven't seen, there's obviously 4 episodes before this and a short little intro episode, so feel free to go back, take a look at those. They're on YouTube at youtube.com/cheddarcaveman. And of course, if you're watching this live now, the Twitch stream is twitch.tv/cheddarcaveman. That's where I live stream this. So if you're catching the YouTube replay, that's where to see me live. Had a couple questions about an audio version of this. I don't know yet that the format for this really works terribly well for audio, and I haven't done any research on easy ways to do that and host that. So I'm certainly open to any advice if anybody wants to send me anything. I do have a couple contacts I can ask. I may look into that at some point. Real quick, let's the format this time. I think I'll talk just briefly about a little bit of news in the Circle/Privateer Press world. I may talk a little bit. I think we'll hold that for now. So I have a couple tournaments coming up. One local one here in a couple weeks, and War Machine Weekend a couple weeks after that. So I know a couple people have been like, talk about a full list that you've been playing and things that you found or not found or so on and so forth. And I'd love to do some of that, and I sort of plan to, but I need to get a little bit more time with some of them in, or I'd like to not exactly lock myself into feeling like I need to play anything in particular, and so on. So more of that down the road, certainly. War Machine Weekend will probably be a pretty big deal, and I'll probably have quite a bit of content, or I'm hoping to have quite a bit of content after that. So anyways, news. Not a whole lot of news. A couple just tiny things, really, in the grand scheme of things. We finally have some official confirmation. We pretty much already did, but we now know the name. Una 2 is Una the Sky Hunter. We saw her art. The illustration art. We saw her model that's fully painted, and we've seen that since Gen Con when Dallas was working on it. We've seen the coin, or pin, I think it's pin, that comes with the set. I expect it to retail for $24.99, the same as the other ones did. So super excited to be getting my hands on her at War Machine Weekend. I would expect to hear some initial thoughts on her and then a follow-up after that's released. So we don't know anything now. There have been no spoilers. They've kept a pretty tight lid on that stuff. We may see some hints sort of leading up to War Machine Weekend, but we're about 3 weeks out still, I think, maybe a little more. Probably a little early for that, but I'm guessing as we get closer we'll get some teasers, and then obviously we will know her rules. The other tidbit of news, not Circle specific, but I suppose worth note, SmogCon in the UK, which now is a Privateer official convention, as well as being the first one of the year since TempleCon has moved to the summertime, and it seems, I'm not actually sure if Privateer has a presence at TempleCon now that it's 2 weeks after Gen Con. If they do, it's certainly not what it was before, where they were the lead off. In any case, it was announced this week that they'll again be sending several Privateer Press staff employees over to the UK for SmogCon. They'll also be sending over a couple exclusive models from the new faction, as well as debuting some of the new factions. So I don't know if that means, I don't know exactly what that means. I imagine we'll see a couple models. We'll probably see a video like we did when Convergence was released, the Gargantuans, the Colossals, and so on, Cephalix. and I imagine that the main release will be at Lock and Load, and then the retail releases through the summer to follow. Could be wrong. Could be all dropping sooner than that. But TempleCon February, SmogCon February will be sort of Privateer's time to throw out a teaser. So we don't know yet if any of those alternate sculpt models that they're going to have there, if those are going to be, if you'll be able to buy them online like some of the other things, or exactly what the details are there. So stay tuned for that. It's sure to be exciting. All right, and that was pretty much all that there is for news. Last week we talked about sort of their, I guess, teasers for what errata's coming. The forums and Facebook groups have been all abuzz with what they think will or won't get changed. I don't really feel the need to speculate too much on here. We'll see in January what happens, and you can go back to the last episode and kind of get a few of my thoughts on that. So let's go into talking about some more models. So this one, an oldie but a goodie from Mark II, the Celestial Fulcrum. And I say that, and a lot of people did not actually even play it in Mark II, but I was not a lot of people, and I did. Upon request, I made sure to have my handy-dandy war room available so I don't misspeak or forget any rules this time. So let me just go over the rules real quick, then we'll talk about sort of the changes and what I've been seeing with play. So Celestial Fulcrum is a black clad, so that could matter later, battle engine. It is speed 5, rat 6, defense 10, armor 19, has a command of 10, although I don't think anything cares about that. It is a construct, no surprise there. It is immune to cold, lightning, and fire, and it has Pathfinder, which all battle engines do. It has 20 wounds, and it costs 19 points. It is field allowance 2. It has 3 ranged attack. It has 3 ranged attacks. It has the first one is Flame Blast, a range 11 AOE. Rate of fire 1, AOE 4, POW 15, and that attack is fire based. It has continuous fire, and it is magic, damage type magical. In addition, the 4-inch AOE is a cloud effect that will remain in play for 1 round. The next gun is called Lightning Bolt. It's range 13, rate of fire 1, POW 14. It is lightning typed and magic. Has damage types of lightning and magic as well, and has Electro Leap. So if it hits a model, it'll jump to another model within 4 inches and do an unboostable POW 10. And then it has a spray, Winter's Rage, spray 10, rate of fire 1, POW 12. It is it's typed both with cold and magic damage. In addition, that attack has critical freeze, so if you roll a crit and it's not immune to cold, it becomes stationary. And then I think I said 20 boxes, and then additional rules. It has circular vision. It has fury generators, so it gets a fury point at the start of each of my control phases, and it can have a maximum of 3, and then it can use those to boost attacker damage rolls. And it's a gun platform, so it can make ranged attacks even while it is in melee. I originally was sort of a little bit not excited about this coming into Mark III, mostly due to the point cost. At 19 points, it's more than most of our heavy war beasts. The exceptions being Getorix, Stalker, Megalith, and I think it's more expensive than everything else. It's more expensive than anything that isn't one of those 3. So it's certainly not a piece for every list. Battle engines have obvious downsides of, like, it can't gain concealment. It's just a large base. It can be easily seen, even terrain independent, and so forth. Also, it didn't get any more ways to boost than it had. The way that I just listed is the same. It used to have gunfighter, now it's gun platform. That's probably an improvement. but then I started looking at the types of guns that it has and the amount of guns, and looking at the places where it improved. So the lightning gun used to be range 12, it's range 13 now. 1 inch is kind of a big deal when you're talking about ranged attacks, because there's a lot of things that are now going to be an inch or two out of threat range that weren't before. The bigger deal is that the fire type attack went up by 3 inches from range 8 to range 11. So that attack was always sort of your like best attack, because it put things on fire, which is really strong. It's an AoE, which meant it was good against infantry, against multiple infantry, and then it continues. POW 15 is obviously fantastic. We don't have, that's the highest power gun in the faction that, other than the Wold Wrath, and it does have the ability to boost. You just have to be very careful with when and how to go about doing that, I would say. And but that extra 3 inches of range means now again you're able to keep back pretty far and stay safe. And the smoke cloud is certainly not something to not consider. We have a lot of stuff that has prowl, so if you can fire it and then you fire it into a position where we don't have one of our things with prowl, clear some stuff out, maybe set it on fire, and then walk something with prowl in, that's good. Obviously blocking line of sight is great. So it's strong for that reason. But the real thing is it's very, very flexible. If we the spray and the AoE are going to be great against infantry, and obviously Electro Leap's just fine. The POW 14, POW 15 guns are going to be great against harder targets, especially if we happen to be able to apply a debuff, or even just making it easier to hit. I've been playing it. A couple things to note on battle engines specifically, and on this one in specific. The Fulcrum used to have a rule called I am now blanking on it, but the gist of it is that the model could not be placed. And that was important in Mark II because shifting stones let you place within 8 inches instead of completely within. Now that we talked about the shifting stones last episode and it's completely within 8 inches, they felt that they could remove that rule from the Fulcrum. So you can now use placement effects on it, shifting stones being the obvious one. But telekinesis from Kruger 2 obviously is in play. You could do Mirage from Mosar. And I'm not really thinking of another placement effect. I'd have to double check on Grail's feet, but it might be able to move with Grail's feet, but I don't believe that. I mean, that's not a placement effect, so it could, if it could do that now, it could have always done that. Yes, you can move it with Grail's feet. The other thing, and relevant to Grail's feet, as well as Kaya 1, which is where I've been playing around with it a little bit lately, mostly because she's on the ADR right now. Battle engines can have stealth, so it's certainly pretty frustrating when your gun platform with all these attacks has stealth and they can't shoot back at it. So, and I think that's pretty critical to it sort of earning its points. Things like Kruger 2 with Windstorm, I believe it's called now. Kaya 1 with Occultation. Mosar theoretically can keep it safe with Pillars. I think Roots of the Earth from Baldur 2 is probably another good one. You can get stealth during Grail's feet, as well as that move, so that might be an interesting place to give it a try. It's not really one that otherwise synergizes with him, so this is the first I've even really thought about it. But those extra movements can be pretty big. It's pretty good. The other things I really like pairing with it, and I think you kind of want to have an excuse to have these in your list for other reasons as well, but the Argus Moonhound turning off stealth for enemy models with his Animus and having marked the target is pretty great. It's already rat 6. If you can aim to 8, great. You're not always going to be able to, though, especially with those previously mentioned places. And even if you can aim, being able to get to 10 is going to be pretty great. So and the Moonhound's pretty cheap. So I don't think that this is a package. Like, I don't think it's a 25-point package that you should just assume you're dropping in. But I think if you have another beast in your list, like a Pureblood that has ranged attacks, or if you have Reeves in your list with ranged attacks, even Blood Trackers, if your caster has ranged attacks, so Kruger, the Storm Raptor is interesting because the Moonhound helps it, and the Storm Raptor's Animus is helps the lightning gun here as well. So that could be there could be something there. We'll kind of look at the Storm Raptor a little bit more once I've gotten it in my hands and gotten it back from my painter, who's pretty excited to get it, as well as the makes sense with the logo there. So anyways, the Fulcrum is a piece that I definitely recommend giving a shot. I don't think you're not going to replace Beast with it, especially not with the 26 to 32 Beast points that we have these days. You're certainly going to need at least 1, 2, 3 Beasts. But if you have a list that doesn't desperately feel like it needs a unit or 2 units, it's a good place to be. If you have something that isn't totally reliant on using forests to block LOS, because it won't block LOS to the Fulcrum, things of that nature, it's going to be something worth considering. And then, like I said, it's got Blackclad listed on there, so we could be seeing something that is relevant from there. Speaking of Argus, let's go ahead and talk about one of those. So this is the Wild Argus. We've talked about the Moonhound before. The Wild Argus is potentially a good pair with the Fulcrum, but let's real quick talk over its stats. Unfortunately, War Room is not the fastest thing ever, but all right. So many of the things we talked about with the Argus chassis, I guess, the Argus base, changed with Mark III. Ultimately, probably makes sense. They sort of swapped stat lines with the Griffins. I think that fit. They all got Pathfinder. I think that fit, and some other changes. But they're now Speed 6, Mat 5, Rat 4. This is the Wild Argus. Defense 14, Armor 15, and has Pathfinder. This particular one has 2 half-inch melee bite attacks that are power strength 12. And in addition has combo strike, so you can forego the 2 initials to get 1 initial at base POW 16. It is Fury 3, Threshold 9, and has, I believe, 21 boxes. I'm not going to count the spiral, but I'm pretty sure that's right. It has Circular Vision, which is a little bit different in Mark II, but I think we've discussed that before. And the real moneymaker here is the Animus Doppler Bark. Living or undead enemy models currently within 2 inches of the spellcaster have their base defense reduced to 5 and cannot run, charge, or make slam or trample power attacks for 1 round. So that Animus is everything about this beast. So it sorry, we got a little bit of fuzziness going on here. There we go. So important note, a lot of people have missed this, that Animus is a pulse. You have to be within 2 inches of the models you want to affect with it when you cast it. You cannot fail a charge and be within 2 inches of it and do it. That doesn't work. Unlike the Moonhound, which does work that way. So, but you can use it a variety of ways. Obviously, reducing something's defense to 5 is extremely strong in the right circumstances. It's a great tool for an assassination. Going back to things like the Fulcrum that I mentioned before, if you can knock down the defense of, say, their Warcaster Warlock, or maybe even an important living or undead heavy of some kind, you don't have to boost the hit anymore. Now you just need to not miss. And obviously snake eyes can happen, but you're pretty likely to hit, and then you can focus on doing damage. Blood trackers, another great example. You may have, even with prey, the enemy warcasters are usually somewhere in the defense 15-16 range. You're still looking at 16, you're still looking at 8s to hit, 7s to hit on a 15 and up. And you hit this, and now all of a sudden you're looking at not missing. That's a big deal. Now you're just talking about damage. It's great for our melee beasts. We have quite a few things that don't want to go in on a high defense model, because then we don't have to boost the hit. It's going to be great there. Anyways, I can go on and on about the reasons why reducing something's defense to 5 is good. I think it's pretty obvious that piece is good. The other side of it, though, is it's also a great control piece. So the thing to keep in mind is this is not an attack. And you can stop something from being able to run, charge, slam, trample, and so on. And that means some of our more you can do a couple things. You can use it to sort of as a sacrifice, right? Where you put it up there, it's only 7 points. You can put it kind of like into some models, use its animus, and they're then going to be forced. They can attack it probably because it's only 2 inches or less away, but they're not leaving from there because they can't run or charge or anything. So if you want to keep some pieces in place, you may want to just do that. If you have some of our more mobile warlocks, you can do things like Kaya 1 can you can put a beast in range. Kaya can kind of go up. She can cast it and then Spirit Door back to safety, or she can Spirit Door sort of across the battlefield using it, turning it off. I would say Mosar is probably even better. You run an infantry model up. He can use Sands of Fate. He can then use Doppler Bark, get the things he needs to not charge, and then Sands of Fate back again to where he wants to be, hopefully somewhere safe. It does cost a lot. I mean, that's a 6 Fury play, but if at the right point in the game, it could be, that could be critical. Kaya 2 is interesting because now you can, the sort of like having to throw it away to do thing that I mentioned before, you can keep it safe. Kaya 1 can do that all game. Kaya 2 can do it with her feet. Someone like Chromac 1 or 2 being able to just guarantee on that they can get their attacks from the defense debuff is going to be great, or defense reduction. It can do slams too, something that a lot of people don't realize, and there is a moment from when you declare the slam to when it actually happens that you can cast this. So you successfully move your 9 inches, they're within a half, so you've made your legal movement to not end your turn. Then you cast your animus, and even though slams against models that are larger than you are -2, you still need to just not miss. At that point, now they're knocked down. They can't do any of those other things I mentioned, so even if they shake, they're still in probably a pretty bad spot. And you may or may not lose the Argus, but that could be pretty important, if you need to guarantee a slam on something with it. It's also got 2 POW 12s and is only 7 points, and Pathfinder, so it can get a lot of places. Primal's still great on it. If you've got another buff like Scything Touch, Chromac 2's feet, Force Evolution, you can get a decent amount of work out of this guy. He's gonna give you up to 5 POW 16s if you can buff him, if you can double buff, or he gets 1 POW 16 charge, which is respectable. Mat 5 is not great, but obviously he can bark at you if he needs the defense down that badly, and he can boost. So all in all, a great piece. It's not for every list, but if you put it in the list, I don't think I would necessarily question you. Do keep in mind it is, as I said, because you do have that as a pulse. I've switched to Moonhunter. A lot of people early on in Mark III were like, Wild Argus is everywhere, and the Moonhunter is 1 point cheaper, though it has 1 less armor, and its melee attacks are 1 less. But getting Mark the Target where you want it is a lot easier because you can just run. So sometimes you're going to want just that +2 and the ability to remove stealth. Sometimes you're going to want this guy. And in some lists, why not take both? That's only 13 points, and you may have a lot of the utility you want. Just taking a look at the time there real quick. So the Wild Argus, he comes with your battle box. If you have played since before Mark III, you probably have plenty of this guy. Get 1 or 2 of them painted up, and I think you'll find some places to play them. Let's move on to some more stuff. Speaking, we haven't talked about a Warlock yet. Let's talk about Kaya, the Moonhunter, and Laris. So obviously, as you can tell, Warlock. Kaya 2 is as the name implies, the second version. So I'll start with Kaya. She comes with Laris, so we'll talk about that in a moment too. Kaya 2 is speed 7, mat 6, defense 16, armor 14, and her melee weapon there is named Glimmer, and it has a 2-inch melee range at POW 11, and it is damage type magical. She's a Fury 6 Warlock with 16 wounds and 24 War Beast points. A couple of the rules on the back of her card. She has Unyielding, so if she's engaging, she gets another +2 armor, which brings her to a pretty respectable 16-16. And she can go up higher. We'll get to that in a moment. And she also has Flank with a Friendly Faction War Beast. And for those of you who don't know how Flank works, if she makes a melee attack against an enemy model that is in the melee range of another Friendly Faction War Beast, she gets +2 to hit and an additional die. So if you can arrange that, she goes up to mat 8, and she's a POW 11 Webmaster. So pretty big. On the back of her card, she has 4 spells. She has Dogpile. Oh, sorry about that. She has Dogpile. It's a cost 2, range 12 upkeep that is offensive. War Beasts in her battle group can charge or make slam power attacks against the against the target model without being forced. They ignore force and cloud effects for determining line of sight for declaring that charge, and they gain +2 inches of movement and Pathfinder when resolving any charges or slams against that model. She has Forced Evolution, a 2-cost friendly upkeep that gives a friendly living faction war beast +2 strength and defense. She has Muzzle, which is an offensive nuke. It costs 2, range 10, POW 12, and if War Beast is damaged by it, it cannot advance toward the spellcaster for 1 round. And Shadow Pack, which is now a 3-cost non-upkeep, range self, AoE covers her control area, and while in her control range, models in her battle group gain stealth, and it lasts for 1 round. And then her feat, Call of the Hunt. She can force War Beasts in her battle group even if they are not in her control range, and at the end of her activation, at the end of the activation of each War Beast in her battle group, you can place that War Beast completely within 3 inches of Kaya, and that of course lasts for 1 round. She comes with that other War Beast there, Laris. He is speed 7, mat 6. He's defense 15, armor 14. He has Pathfinder. He has 1 power 12 bite. He is Fury 3, Threshold 10. I think he also has 21 boxes. Room doesn't easily tell me. 20, 21, 22, somewhere in there. He has a bond with Kaya, which lets her channel through him, which he can't do if the enemy takes control like most of the other bonds. If Kaya is destroyed, the game's probably over, but I guess in a 2-caster game, he would be removed from the table. And he has Guard Dog, so if he's within 3 inches of his Warlock and he's not knocked down or stationary, the Warlock gains parry and +2 defense against melee attack rolls, and models cannot gain the backstrike bonus against the Warlock. And then he has an Animus called Spirit Shift, so if Laris uses the Animus, Laris can be placed completely within 2 inches of Kaya. If Kaya uses it, she can be placed completely within 2 inches of Laris, and neither can advance after doing that. So that was a mouthful. The two of them have seen quite a bit of success. I've played a couple games with them. I think the focus on some of the focus on how they work has changed, and some of it hasn't. So Shadow Pack, it has a pretty big change. Costing 3 and not being an upkeep means it has to actually be a conscious decision to use it. So before you just cast it, you'd upkeep it because it costs 1 and move about your day. Now it costs 3. That's half her stack. And she has some other more interesting things she likely wants to do with some of that fury. Plus, even though she can be a 16-14, 16-16, 18-14 or 16, depending on a bunch of circumstances that I just listed off, she's still a little bit squishy, and certainly if she gets knocked down, it's going to be a bad day. So, Shadow Pack, look at what guns your opponent has, look at how important that is to stop, how much it's going to save you before you just cast that. And that's sort of on an every turn basis. And I guess that kind of makes sense with a spell that costs 3, but definitely remember it. I would say, Forced Evolution has always been a fantastic spell for her. Any strength buff in Circle is great, and defense buffs on things that are already defense 13, 14, and 15 is obviously really strong. So defense 16, armor 19 Getorix with Spiny Growth and Force Evo is going to be a giant pain. A Shadowhorn going up to defense 17 versus charges can be very strong. Any of our Griffins can use their Animus, go up to defense 17. Sorry, not any of them, but the Scarsfell. They can all go up to 17, but the Scarsfell can use its Animus to gain dodge. So now you've got to hit a defense 17 thing with dodge and stealth, which it always has. Super strong spell there. That one's pretty obvious. You want to put it on the thing that either needs to hit hard or stay alive. Ideally, both. Muzzle is going to be pretty situational, mostly because at Fury 6, she's going to want to boost the hit a lot of the time if she really needs it to happen, and then she's going to need to boost damage to make sure that it damages with only being a POW 12. Unless you're going to bring somebody like Megalith, who only synergizes with so much of her spell list. Muzzle's going to be corner case, but definitely remember it when that case is there. Being able to lock down something like a Mammoth if it's their only beast, or toward the end of the game being able to lock down a Mulg, a Moloch, any Legion Heavies, etc. It can probably save you the game, but don't look to cast it all the time. You're not generally going to want to. And then that leaves us with Dogpile. So it got buffed, actually, going into Mark 2. It used to be range 10. It's now range 12, which is pretty big. It lets Kai stay a long ways away, or Laris even longer, because Laris can be the Arcanine. And being able to get free charges at longer threat range right now with all of the heavy war beasts that are in the game, and long threat ranges that can be pre-measured. Again, the 12-inch on that spell being pre-measurable, although it could always been because that's our control area. Both really huge. She is the only, not positive on that. She's one of the few ways that we have to give our non-Pathfinder beast Pathfinder, and it's on that charge. But not being able to ignore line of sight is big. Pathfinder's big. One interesting thing, it makes her pretty good into Wormwood. He has to play back pretty far, and his beast, he's got to play everything very cagey, because his feet and the Sentry Stones are not going to stop something. You can get Kaya or Laris within the 3 inches for the line of sight, tag it with Dogpile, and you put your whole army into whatever it is. Or and then if she hasn't feeded, you might put your whole army into stuff, feed, maybe lose Laris, and trade Laris for a huge amount of their army, or for something like Wormwood. So watch out for that. If you're playing against Circle, if you're playing Circle and you see Kaya and you're relying on forests, remember that. If you see their lists and you think they're going to try to rely on forests, drop Kaya. We talked about that a little bit with Tanith and with Scarsfell Griffins as well. If you forgot, we'll talk about Ravagers sometime, but they can kind of do a little bit of that too, but not nearly as well. So Dogpile also really can be strong on her feet turn, where you're going to get a strong alpha from farther away than they are, followed by your feet bringing your whole army back, and then being able to do it again. So if you can do that correctly, by the time you've sort of double alpha, hopefully you've gotten enough of an advantage that you can sort of spiral that into a win. Some tricks to keep in mind. Having assault on purebloods is pretty big now, so if you can find something to assault so that his activation doesn't end and you feat, you can dig pretty deep in their army for support pieces and then bring them back. A trick with Laris, if you have shifting stones in your list, is you can place Laris with the shifting stones to get an arc farther out, and then when you activate Laris, he can use his Animus to come back to safety. Another important note with that Animus is it does not stop Kaya from attacking. So you can run Laris 14 inches. You can then, if you need to, you can walk Kaya 7 inches so that he's back in control. Spend 2, be placed completely within 2 inches of Laris, and then make, at that point, up to 5 more attacks. So last-ditch effort. Or if you can get flank off, it's going to be big. If you can get behind them now, that's so much easier than it used to be. She goes up to 8, maybe 10 if you again with flank. If they're not careful, Kaya can just kill them. Even just charging, and when she needs to, she can take, power 11 weapon masters. Obviously, nothing to scoff at. And then she often can be pretty safe if she does happen to get into melee. Trying to think. She did lose Alpha. I think it was called Alpha in Mark II, which let her beasts run, charge, trample, run, charge, power attack for free. They do have to pay for those things now. So that's a bit of a nerf for her, but given how the game changed and the things available, she has Dogpile, we have Blackclads and Lanissa available to us. I think that's probably fine. Especially considering that she already is helping us skew some damage math. Trying to remember if there's any other tidbits with her. I would say you're gonna be pretty hard pressed to find living beasts in our faction that don't have some potential with her. The Shadowhorn can be pretty interesting, as I mentioned. It's got set defense, so going up to 17 against charges can be big. Getorix is fantastic. Purebloods are fantastic. A Feral or Gorax is super helpful to get some more, Primal on top of some of our other damage buffs. Also, speaking of Primal, the way Frenzies work is, which Primal causes, is you charge the nearest thing you can see. With her feet, if you place it so that they basically, they're like the naughty kid in school whose face nose into the corner, so that they can't actually see any of the other things, they don't do anything. They just shake all effects, drop their fury, and stand there. So that's super helpful in the right case. So if you need to feat and make sure something's dead, primal it and then try to position so that you can do that. You can also just have a frenzy on a mannequin or something, but really liking Kai too. I've played only 3 or 4 games with her. There's a lot of other game reports out there. She was played at WTC pretty effectively. Tom Guan has been playing her quite a few conventions to a lot of effect. She's very strong in her faction right now. Stealth still can be a huge difference maker, and it can't be purified now, so that sort of makes her a little bit of a superior play into Protectorate that it wasn't before. And especially the Pureblood spray is magic, so that helps you into Protectorate. Very strong caster. I wouldn't say she doesn't. Most of her tricks you're gonna have to like put her on the table and sort of see where you can get all the movement. A Speed 7 Warlock is always very nice to have. We'll come back to that when we talk about Grail for sure. She has 2-inch melee, so she has a lot of personal threat. She's pretty survivable, all things considered. Definitely still try to keep some camp on her, keep her really safe, but great Warlock, definitely recommend it. If I start playing a list that's more my own, we'll talk about that, actually. Right now, the last list I played with her is a version that Tom played, but I've certainly considered playing her with things like Riphorn Satyrs, which are cheaper, and she can kind of dial them way up, and they still charge for free. So I've thought about them in a lot of lists, actually, and we may have to come back to them when I get a chance to do more testing with them. So anyways, Kaya 2, great Warlock. Definitely recommend some table time. And coming in about 40 minutes here, so let's talk one more guy, and we'll talk about the Wold Guardian. So let's get the handy stats. Sorry for the delay. The Wold Guardian. He is speed 4, making him the slowest thing that is not immobile in our faction. Strength 12, mat 6, defense 9, armor 20. He has no command, as he is a construct. He has Pathfinder. He has 2 1-inch range POW 17 magic typed attacks that have Ram. What Ram says is when an enemy model is hit during his combat action, it becomes knocked down and can be pushed 1 inch directly away from this model. If he is, you can follow up exactly up to that 1 inch. And the 1 inch is a push, your follow up is in advance, just to be clear. He has 35 boxes, I would say the largest contingent of which is in the body, and the least in the spirit, it looks like. He's Fury 3, so a little low on the Warbeast side. And then he is our only shield guard currently. There's a minion beast, but that would be quite ridiculous to try to take. And he's steady, so he can't be knocked down. If you have the cards, worth note, this guy was errata. He used to have sturdy, which meant he couldn't be pushed, until we realized that Bradigus's feat's a push, and that was sort of a late change, I guess, and they didn't, that was a miss, and they went back and removed that so that it actually did function with Bradigus. And then its Animus is Irresistible Force, a 1-cost self-animi that gives it Bulldoze, so if it goes into base to base with something, it can push it another 2 inches. And it is 17 points, and obviously field lines unlimited. I've played only sparing amounts of the Wold Guardian. It does okay. I think for 17 points that it needs more things to help it. So armor 20, obviously tough not to crack, but defense 9, not tough to hit. 35 boxes is a big help, whereas before it had, I think, 30, but it had a better Animus. Range 1 on those fists is definitely helpful, gives them another half inch, and when you're speed 4, you need every bit you can get. Shield Guard is obviously a great ability, and it now goes out 3 inches, though it does not stop. It doesn't let you intercept sprays. I played him in a list with Baldur 2, which was basically tanking. It was 2 of these and a Woldrath. I've played it in Bradigus list that I've only played once so far. I had 2 of them along with some other Wolds. And one of these in that game closed it out. Really, the big thing here is at 17 points, he's not really a ton of utility. He's obviously a little slow. You're going to want Shifting Stones with him a lot because they actually extend his threat by an inch. So he's the only thing that's still true for. Unless you nail Hunter's Mark, then he's a little farther ahead. The knockdown is great. Obviously, if you're going against something where their armor isn't such a big deal, but their defense is, POW 17 will close it out, especially when they're knocked down. Shield guards are obviously great at armor 20 with 35 boxes. This guy can absorb a lot of punishment. The construct thing can be nice because you don't have to worry about him frenzying. Altogether, I'm having a harder time. I had a little bit of a hard time putting these in lists in Mark 2. I'm still having a little bit of a hard time putting them in lists in Mark 3. At POW 17, at 17 points, He's certainly in the I'm a heavy war beast category, but I can't put primal on him. And not all of our warcasters have a damage fixer. And at Fury 3 and only 2 initials, though he is 1 power more than a pureblood, he probably still isn't ever going to hit as hard, or maybe just as hard. And then I can primal the pureblood, and he has a spray, and he has an animus that I want to use in a few more games than I've so far wanted to use Irresistible Force. I had been hoping... I don't know that it really makes... A lot of people think that he should have +1 strength, and I'd be fine with that as a change to him. I'm still hoping, or had kind of hoped a bit, that we would see some kind of support that was sort of choir-esque for Wolds. That said, the new solo that came out is really good for Wolds, the Stone Shaper. Being able to remove a Fury so you can transfer them is big. I mean, Shifting Stones can do it, but they have to wait around. The ability to remove d6 of damage on something that's armor 20 with this many boxes is great. I obviously talked about them with Wold Wrath. And, I mean, the spray's fine, but that isn't relevant to this guy. With a damage buff, he can get some work done, so Bradius can get him up to power 20. 20 is pretty good. It's not great, though. When we're talking great damage output, we're talking about like a Primal Getorix with a strength buff, and now you're talking about power 23. The Wold Wrath with Stone Skin goes up to 21. This guy can top out at 20. So, not entirely sure all that often where you want him. I think if you have a list that wants to take Wolds, or you really, really need a shield guard, this is going to be your guy. Bradigus is still going to play. I would suggest still going to play at 1 to 2 or 3 of these for the shield guard alone. He wants that a lot of times, and his feet and being able to hit with these things is you're going to close. You can still close out games. He's 14-inch threat on the feet turn. Which is potentially non-linear depending on a bunch of factors. And like I said, you can get him up to 20 when he gets there, and Mat 9, and then he's going to auto knock you down. So can be pretty good there. Irresistible Force on a speed 4 thing is probably usable. I haven't played him enough to see when it would be used. I haven't played the Riphorn enough either. It's the other model we have it on, to see if it's great there. I wish it's one of those animi, though, where you kind of want to run and use it occasionally, and you can't. So that's kind of a bummer. As with all Wolds, especially heavies, the lights, maybe you can get away with it because they're more likely just to end up dead if they take damage. But with the heavies, you're probably going to want to make sure you always have some way to repair them. So the Stone Shaper, Shifting Stones, Baldur, either of them, or Bradigus at the moment can do that. Gobber Tinker also, I believe, can do that. Definitely something to consider here. But if he's also just going to be overshadowed by Megalith a little bit. Megalith has 1 more Fury, 1 more Mat, better Animus, Geomancy, and only costs you 3 more points. So much as I really want to sell you on the Wold Guardian, and I don't think I'm not a like this is terrible, this is great type. Well, I say stuff's great a lot, but I'm rarely going to tell you something's just terrible. But what I am going to say is, if you want this guy in a list, you need to know why. Either you want the shield guards, you want the tankiness of the armor 20, but you don't care if the damage output is a little lower. Someone like Baldur 2, if you go back to Mark 2 and look at what Walter did with Baldur 2, he would tell you that these guys got the first strike a lot, and that was just because of how Baldur tanked up the field. And if you can't kill them, as opposed to Warpwolf, you send a Primal Pureblood in, which was my example, either they're going to ignore it for a turn or it's dead. Even defense 14, armor 17, not going to save you. You're probably not going to be able to get something like Roots on it or another armor buff if you send it in. You're probably not even going to worry about it because you don't even know if you're going to get to use it the next turn. At armor 20, and this depends a little bit on what you're playing it into, you get an armor buff on it. Like I said, Roots of the Earth, maybe some of our other +2 ones. It's probably not going to just die. So as long as you can repair its relevant systems, get some more attacks in there, you kind of get 2 turns at POW 17, which is, if that is the case, you're going to do a little better. And like I said, with Bradigus, with the feet, being able to slide in an extra 5 and slide back can make these guys pretty frustrating to deal with. So that's kind of what's going on with that guy. So I'd say that's a little shorter on him, but if I get some more time with him, or we see a new theme that kind of changes what he's doing, then we'll go a little more. Anyways, we'll go ahead and start wrapping it up with that. Thanks as always for tuning in. Next week, I hope to be back with probably just some more model entries, or model discussions rather, and unless there's some news between now and then, obviously we're awaiting some spoilers for Una the Sky Hunter. We know about Loki. My guess would be he'll be in the Circle Command book, and we know the Storm Raptor's coming. We already know it's in the Wolf Rider Champion are coming. We know the rules though, but once I get my hands on them and play them a little, we'll talk more about them perhaps. In addition, as always, I would like to thank my sponsor, Griffin's Roost Painting. If you the models I've been showing again are models that she has painted. Great work, and can work with you to, depending on what type of paint job you're looking for and what you want painted. So check them out. They're griffinsroostpainting.com or Griffin's Roost Painting on Facebook, and just shoot a message over and you can start a discussion about what you might be interested in. As always, thanks for tuning in, and we'll hope to see you next week.